August 26th, 1944. A sodden field east of Évreux, France. Rain falls in a fine, persistent mist, turning the rich Norman soil into a greedy, boot-sucking mud. It clings to the gray-green wool of Hannah Schmidt's uniform, dampening the Blitzmädchen insignia on her sleeve. For 3 days, the world has been nothing but the percussive rumble of distant artillery and the closer, tearing sound of canvas as her unit's SDKFC 251 half-track crashed through hedgerows in the desperate retreat from the Falaise pocket. Now, the world is silent. It's a silence more terrifying than any explosion. It is the sound of a trap that has finally sprung. Hannah huddles in the back of the vehicle, her fingers still coiled around the cold bakelite of her headphones, a phantom crackle of static echoing in her ears. She is a Nachrichtenhelferin, a signals auxiliary. Her job was to connect the front to the rear, to weave a web of voices that held the army together. But the web is torn. The last coherent transmission she relayed was a frantic, clipped report from a panzer commander. Something about encirclement, something about a wall of steel. Then nothing, just the hiss of an empty frequency. Beside her, Liesel, a decade older and weathered by years of war from the moment it began in Poland, stares out at the tree line, her face a mask of grim resignation. On the other side, young Eva, barely 18 and fresh from a training school in Dresden, trembles, her knuckles white where she grips the splintered wooden bench. They are 3 of a dozen women, a communications detachment now utterly disconnected, marooned in an ocean of chaos. The Hauptmann in the front cab, a man whose weary eyes have seen one war too many, has ordered the driver to halt. They are out of fuel. They are out of options. You can smell the defeat in the air. It's a compound of wet wool, diesel fumes, cold fear, and the cloying sweetness of apple orchards trampled under the treads of tanks. The sounds begin to return. Not the familiar guttural cough of German engines, but something different. A higher-pitched, more consistent rumble. It grows, vibrating through the floor of the half-track, through the soles of Hannah's worn boots. Liesel's head snaps around. Amerikaner, she whispers, the word less a warning than a final verdict. Then you see it. An M4 Sherman tank crests the small rise 100 meters away, its olive-drab hull slick with rain. It looks impossibly tall, an angular beast of rivets and steel, its 75mm cannon swinging slowly, deliberately towards them. Another appears to its left, and then a third. They don't hurry. They move with the lumbering, unassailable confidence of the victor. Behind them, infantrymen spread out, their silhouettes distinct against the gray sky. They carry their M1 Garands at a low ready, their movements fluid and professional. They do not look tired. They look like they have all the time and all the fuel in the world. The side door of the half-track groans open. The Hauptmann steps down into the mud. He looks at his stranded vehicle, at the frightened faces of the young women in his charge, and then at the approaching American tanks. He unbuckles his holster, but not to fight. He lets the belt and the Walther P38 pistol fall into the mud with a wet slap. He raises his empty hands. It is over. One by one, the women climb down. The mud is cold, seeping instantly into their boots. The American soldiers are closer now. You can see their faces. They are so young, younger than Hannah expected, many of them looking as green as Eva. One of them is chewing. His jaw works in a slow, circular motion. He isn't angry. He isn't triumphant. He looks bored. The sheer, shocking casualness of it sends a fresh spike of fear through Hannah. This, for them, is just another day. For her, it is the end of everything. A sergeant with stripes on his sleeves barks an order in a language that sounds harsh and alien. He gestures with his rifle. Drop the bags. Form a line. The women comply, their movements stiff with fear and exhaustion. Hannah lets her small satchel, containing a spare set of clothes and a worn photograph of her family in Berlin, fall at her feet. The bored soldier looks at her, his chewing briefly pausing. His eyes are not unkind, just empty, impersonal. He is simply processing an obstacle. He jerks his head toward a waiting truck, a big canvas-topped GMC. Let's go, Fräulein. Auf geht's. The German words are mangled, an awkward approximation learned from a phrasebook, but the meaning is clear. Hannah joins the shuffling line of prisoners, her gaze fixed on the churned-up ground, avoiding the eyes of her captors. The war for her is over. A new, terrifying uncertainty is just beginning.
The journey in the back of the GMC truck is a teeth-rattling, bone-jarring eternity. There are no seats, just a cold, vibrating metal bed. Hannah presses herself into a corner, trying to make herself small as the vehicle lurches over cratered farm roads. The canvas flaps snap in the wind, offering fleeting glimpses of a conquered landscape. Burned-out panzers nosed into ditches like dead animals, discarded equipment littering the roadsides, and endless, shuffling columns of gray-clad German soldiers, their faces blank with shock and exhaustion. The sheer scale of the defeat is staggering. It's not a battle lost. It is an army that has ceased to exist. They drive for hours, deeper into the American lines. The sounds of war recede completely, replaced by the hum of an immense, well-oiled machine. Convoys of trucks, identical to the one she is in, stretch for kilometers, laden with ammunition, fuel, and supplies. Jeeps buzz past like angry insects. Everything is olive drab. Everything is moving. Everything exudes a sense of limitless resource. Hannah thinks of the last letters from home, of the ever-shrinking ration cards, the earth-sots coffee made from roasted acorns, the constant gnawing hunger. The world she has just left and the world she is entering do not seem to operate by the same physical laws. Finally, the truck slows, turning off the main road and into a vast, muddy field. Ahead, a city of canvas tents has sprung up under the gray sky. Barbed wire, strung between freshly driven posts, delineates massive holding pens. This is a temporary prisoner of war collection point. Thousands of German soldiers are already here, milling about aimlessly or sitting in stunned silence on the wet ground. As Hannah and the other WIMs are ordered out of the truck, a new smell hits them, cutting through the damp air. It's a rich, roasted, slightly sweet aroma. It is the smell of coffee, real coffee. The scent is so foreign, so luxurious, it's disorienting. It's a ghost from a forgotten life. They are processed with a detached, almost bureaucratic efficiency. A tired-looking officer at a folding table takes down their names, ranks, and units, his questions relayed through a German-speaking corporal. Their pockets are emptied, their few personal belongings examined, and, for the most part, returned. The women are then separated from the men and guided by a young private into a smaller, separate enclosure. The wire is just as high, the mud just as deep. Rumors begin to circulate in hushed, frightened whispers. Liesel, her cynicism hardened by the day's events, is certain of their fate. They'll ship us to America, she mutters, her voice low. Or worse, to the Russians. Eva begins to cry again, silent tears carving tracks through the grime on her cheeks. Hannah says nothing. She watches the Americans. They move with a purpose that seems entirely disconnected from the prisoners they are guarding. They are setting up field kitchens, great steaming vats over roaring gas burners. They are laughing, smoking cigarettes, their posture relaxed. They do not look like men who have just won a great victory. They look like men getting ready for dinner. The sun is beginning to set, staining the clouds a bruised purple. The temperature drops. A damp chill sets in, and the women huddle together for warmth, their gray uniforms offering little protection. For a long time, nothing happens. They are simply left to wait, to contemplate the wire and the mud and the unknown. You can feel the collective dread solidifying as darkness falls. The fear of the night, of what might happen when they are no longer visible, is a palpable thing. Then a sharp voice cuts through the gloom. An American sergeant stands at the gate of their enclosure, holding a clipboard. He shouts something. The words are lost, but the tone is unmistakable. It is an order. Another GI, a translator, steps forward. His German is clear, if heavily accented. "You will line up," he says, pointing toward one of the smoking field kitchens. "It is time to eat." Food. The word hangs in the air, a single, complex syllable containing a universe of meaning. It means survival. It means a reprieve. But it is also a word from them, the enemy. It is a gift from the hand that holds the gun. Suspicion wars with the desperate, gnawing emptiness in their stomachs. To be fed by your captor is an act of profound vulnerability. It is an admission of total dependence. Slowly, hesitantly, the women get to their feet. They form a ragged line, shuffling forward through the mud, their eyes fixed on the steam rising from the massive metal pots, wondering what new, terrifying phase of their captivity is about to begin. The queue moves with the slow, shuffling gait of the utterly exhausted. As Hannah gets closer to the field kitchen, the smells intensify, becoming stranger and more distinct. It is not one scent, but a concert of them. There is the sweet, earthy aroma of beans, but also something else. A savory, slightly smoky smell from a massive pot of boiling water. A smell of meat unlike any she has ever known. It isn't the familiar smell of pork stew or the thin, greasy scent of cabbage soup. It is alien. It carries a hint of spice, something manufactured and foreign. Her stomach, empty for the better part of 2 days, clenches in a painful knot of hunger and revulsion. The Americans serving the food work with an assembly line rhythm. They are loud, laughing among themselves, seemingly oblivious to the silent, wary women they are feeding. The first soldier, a heavy-set man with a stained apron over his uniform, slops a ladle full of dark, thick beans onto each metal tray. The next man is in charge of the main course. He stands over the steaming vat, using a long pair of metal tongs to fish out what look like long, swollen sausages. They are a uniform, unnatural pinkish red, glistening under the bare electric bulbs strung up over the tent. Hannah has never seen such a thing. German sausage is pale or brown or mottled with fat and herbs. This looks like a child's toy, something made of rubber, not of meat. But it is the next station that truly stops her mind. A soldier stands before a massive cardboard box filled with bread rolls. But this is not bread as she understands it. It is not the dense, dark, almost black rye loaf, the Kriegsbrot, that has been the staple of German life for years, a bread so heavy it feels like a weapon in your hand. This bread is snow white. It is perfectly formed, impossibly soft. The soldier takes a roll, slices it open with a single practiced motion, and places one of the pink sausages inside. The contrast of the pink meat against the pure white of the bread is jarring, almost grotesque. It doesn't look like food. It looks like a symbol of something she cannot comprehend. "It's poison," Liesel mutters just behind her. Her voice is low, meant only for Hannah. "They fatten the pigs before the slaughter. Do not eat it." The fear, which had subsided into a dull ache of exhaustion, returns with a vengeance. Liesel's words tap into the deep well of propaganda they have been fed for years. Stories of American barbarism, of their contempt for their enemies. Perhaps this is it. A simple, efficient way to deal with thousands of unwanted prisoners. Hannah looks at the faces of the American soldiers. They are not cruel faces. They are simply blank, indifferent. The boy serving the bread looks up, catches her eye, and gives a slight, almost imperceptible smile. Is it a gesture of kindness or the smirk of an executioner? It is her turn. She pushes her tray forward, her hands trembling slightly. The big soldier slops the beans on. They land with a wet, heavy sound. She moves to the next station. The man with the tongs plucks a sausage from the water and drops it into the waiting white bread bun. It nestles there, steaming slightly. He shoves the tray along. Now she is in front of the young soldier who smiled. He is maybe 20. He gestures with a knife toward 2 large jars. One contains a deep red paste, the other a vibrant, shocking yellow. He says a word she doesn't understand. Mustard? Ketchup? She shakes her head, too bewildered to speak. He shrugs, then takes his knife and puts a smear of the yellow paste along the sausage. The smell is sharp, vinegary, and utterly foreign. He slides the tray into her hands. It is warm. It feels heavy, substantial. Hannah stands frozen for a moment, staring down at the bizarre assembly. A pink sausage in a white bun with a yellow stripe. It is the most alien thing she has ever held. PFC Miller, the young soldier from Ohio, watches her, a slight frown of confusion on his face. He doesn't understand her hesitation. To him, it's just a hot dog. It's supper. It's Tuesday. For Hannah Schmidt, holding the tray in the cold mud of a French field, it is a riddle, a threat, a test, and her hunger is screaming at her to solve it. Hannah finds a patch of slightly less sodden ground near the edge of the enclosure and sinks down, the metal tray balanced carefully on her knees. Liesel sits beside her, her own tray untouched, her arms crossed in defiance. Eva joins them, her eyes wide and fearful as she stares at the strange food. Around them, the same scene repeats itself. The women sit in small, silent groups, 100 identical trays holding 100 identical enigmas. The gnawing ache in their stomachs is a physical force, a primal command to eat, but their minds, conditioned by years of scarcity and suspicion, are screaming a warning. Food is precious. Food is earned. Food is never, ever given this freely, this casually, by an enemy. An American officer, a captain by the insignia on his helmet, walks along the edge of their pen, observing them. He stops, his brow furrowed in annoyance. He clearly misinterprets their hesitation as a protest, a form of prisoner defiance. He barks an order to the German-speaking corporal who follows him like a shadow.
The corporal's voice rings out across the enclosure, sharp and clear. The captain says you will eat, now. This is an order. The command is, strangely, a relief. It removes the burden of choice. This is no longer a question of trust or suspicion. It is an order to be obeyed. Failure to comply will have consequences. Survival in the army, even a defeated one, is predicated on following orders. Hannah looks at Liesel, whose jaw is set in a stubborn line, but even she seems to understand that defiance is a luxury they no longer possess. A few of the younger women, their hunger overwhelming their fear, have already begun to eat, tearing at the soft bread with a desperate urgency. Hannah looks down at her tray. The thing, the hot dog, sits there, a surreal splash of color in the great twilight. The steam has stopped rising. She can feel the warmth fading through the metal. She lifts it. The bread is soft, yielding to the pressure of her fingers in a way that feels decadent, wasteful. She brings it to her mouth. The sharp, unfamiliar scent of the yellow mustard fills her nostrils. She closes her eyes, half expecting the bitter taste of poison, the searing pain of a chemical burn. She takes a bite. For a moment, there is only confusion. Then, an explosion of sensation floods her mouth. It is a tidal wave of flavor she has almost forgotten existed. Salt. A deep, savory, meaty saltiness from the sausage, a taste so potent it makes her tongue tingle. Fat. A rich, warming fat that coats her mouth, a luxury her body has been starved up for years. And sweetness. An unbelievable, shocking sweetness from the soft white bread. The sharp, vinegary tang of the mustard cuts through it all, a counterpoint that only makes the other flavors more intense. It is overwhelming. It is dizzying. It is the most delicious thing she has ever tasted. Her eyes snap open. The fear is gone, vaporized by the sheer, undeniable reality of the taste. This is not poison. This is food. It is food of an order of magnitude, of a richness she can barely process. Her body, conditioned to the bland, starchy diet of a nation at war, reacts with a jolt of pure physical pleasure. She takes another bite, larger this time, and then another. The combination of textures, the slight snap of the sausage casing, the pillowy softness of the bun, the thick smoothness of the beans, is a revelation. This is not sustenance. This is a feast. She glances at Eva. The young woman is eating with a similar, wide-eyed astonishment, her earlier tears forgotten. Then Hannah looks at Liesel. The older woman, the cynic, the one who was so certain of poison, has taken a single, hesitant bite. She is not chewing. She is perfectly still, the hot dog held halfway to her mouth. Her face, hardened by years of loss and bitter endurance, has crumpled. A single tear escapes her eye, tracing a clean path through the dirt on her cheek, as she stares at the food in her hand as if it had just betrayed her entire understanding of the world. And in that moment, Hannah understands that it has.
The meal ends in a profound, echoing silence. The frantic, desperate eating gives way to a heavy stillness as the last of the food is consumed. For the first time in years, Hannah feels the unfamiliar sensation of a truly full stomach. It is a warm, dense feeling that should be comforting, but it isn't. It feels alien, a foreign presence inside her. Around her, the other women sit with their empty trays, their expressions a mixture of lingering shock and a dawning, terrible comprehension. The hot dog is gone, but its meaning remains, settling in their minds with the cold weight of a final, incontrovertible truth. Liesel has finished hers, eating with a mechanical, joyless determination when she started. Now she simply stares into the darkness beyond the wire. The single tear has dried on her cheek, leaving a pale track. "They did not have to fire a single shot," she whispers, her voice brittle. "They could have just dropped this from the sky. We would have surrendered a year ago." Hannah understands exactly what she means. This meal was not an act of kindness. It wasn't an act of cruelty. It was an act of thoughtless, staggering, crushing power. You see it in the casual way the GIs clean up. A young soldier, PFC Miller, the one who served Hannah the bread, walks past their enclosure. He's eating a hot dog himself. He takes 2 bites, then seems to lose interest. With a shrug, he tosses the remaining 2/3 of it into a large metal bin designated for trash. The gesture is not meant to be seen. It is not a display of arrogance. It is simply the act of a man who is full and knows with absolute certainty that there will be more food tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. That single, thoughtless act is more devastating to Hannah than the sight of 1,000 Sherman tanks. Her entire world, for as long as she can remember, has revolved around the conservation of every calorie. A dropped potato was a tragedy. A moldy crust of bread was salvaged. Her mother's letters were filled with tips on how to stretch the weekly meat ration, how to make soup from vegetable peelings. They were a nation that had turned scarcity into a science, a virtue. They had been told their sacrifice, their stoicism, their ability to endure on black bread and thin soup was their strength. It was the mark of their moral and spiritual superiority. But here, in this muddy field, that entire belief system crumbles to dust. Their sacrifice was meaningless. Their strength was a pathetic illusion. They were not fighting a nation of equals. They were fighting a nation that used food for landfill. The enemy's power was not just in its factories and its bombers, but in its fields, its farms, its sheer obscene abundance. This simple meal reveals the truth of the war in a way no strategic briefing ever could. They had not been fighting a war of armies. They had been fighting a war of economies, and they had lost before the first shot was ever fired. The initial shock of the delicious foreign food has now soured into a bitter aftertaste of humiliation. It is the taste of total, unconditional, and absolute defeat. The American hot dog was not just food. It was an instrument of psychological warfare more effective than any propaganda leaflet. It told them that their entire existence, their years of hardship and deprivation, their belief in their cause, was a monstrous, tragic joke. As darkness completely envelops the camp, Hannah Schmidt sits with the empty tray on her lap. The fear she felt during the capture is gone. The anxiety about her future as a prisoner has faded into a distant concern. In their place is a hollow, aching emptiness that has nothing to do with hunger. She looks past the wire at the distant, casual glow of the American tents. She had been a soldier in the greatest army in Europe. Now she is just a hungry girl who has been fed by a nation so rich it doesn't know what to do with its leftovers. The war did not end for her when the Hauptmann topped his pistol in the mud. It ended when she tasted the impossible sweetness of white bread.